Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. Third live stream, I think, in 3 days. I hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things you love with those you love to do them with. We got a little Thursday night roundup. Apologies for those people that were looking forward to seeing this yesterday. We've got a debutant on the channel. You will know him if you are a frequenter of the wonderful Chris Cowling's show. I think he gets around a little bit more maybe to other channels, but I know him from Chris Cowling's show. He's a wonderful, wonderful man with some wonderful takes on Tottenham. It's been a long time coming to get him on. Craig Dearman is his name. We're going to bring him in a second, alongside one of the softest but most eloquently spoken men I have ever come across. I have the pleasure of sitting one row in front of him at the stadium. From Oh So Spurs, we have Jim. And it's going to be a nice little, hopefully, a really sound conversation where we've got to talk a little bit about Daniel Levy. Going to get a take on the protests. I haven't heard them yet. But also, you've got Arsenal's numbers out yesterday, I think it was, or today. Yesterday, you had Manchester United's, and they are the tale of two different kind of diverse, I don't know, stories. A tale of two cities, if you like, with regards how money, if spent well, if the team is performing, what it can do for you and what the outcomes can look like versus what can happen if you wonder how the mighty can fall. Manchester United in an absolute terrible state financially. And what has Ruben Amorim walked into? Does he have any chance of creating the squad that he hopes? We're going to find out the guy's feelings on that. And obviously, we also have to talk about our transfer policies. Ange Postecoglou, what does it take to kind of get him safe? Is everyone that's gone a little bit too early on the Ange out? A couple of games, Europa League qualification. We find out about the draw on Friday. Who are we going to get? We know it's one of two teams. What does it look like also for our chance of qualifying for Europe next season? We've got all the kind of stats and the things to get through in that regard. So settle in, strap yourself in, get yourself a beer or a cup of tea or whatever it is that you do, and hit the like button. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Just quickly get yourself over to Football Link as well if you fancy some kind of non-Tottenham specific stuff with me and Johnny. The link is in the description for that. I'll be publishing Jim's Oh So Spurs link in a minute. I don't think Craig has got his own specific channel unless he is representing Chris Cowling, in which case I will ask him and we'll find that and get that link as well. We'll smash that up there for you as well. But make sure you hit the like and the subscribe to everybody, and we will see you in, well, not in a second because we're literally starting right now. Let me bring in Craig and let me bring in Jim. Here they are. Hello, lads. How are we doing?
How you doing?
Hello.
Good to see you, boys. Good to see you. Let me actually, you know, I need to change this background. That background is absolutely horrendous.
Looks like transfer deadline day, that, Sean.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to give me an epileptic fit, I think, if I'm not careful. Jim, sorry, Craig, I'll start with you, mate. Welcome to the show, mate. Welcome to the show. How have you been? It's been a long time coming. It's great to see you.
It has, yeah, and thanks for having me on, Sean. And if anybody follows Chris Cowling, I'm a regular on the channel, the Spurs Chat podcast. This is my first time on any other podcast, actually. So
is it? Wow.
Yeah. Other than, I think I did a Villa preview for a Villa channel once, and I think I did a Burnley one as well, but certainly Tottenham related. So
we'll try and make you feel lovely and comfortable, mate. No pressure, no stresses. You know,
sure
it'll be as nice as Craig. As Chris. Appreciate you, mate. Great to see you, Jim. Great to have you back on the channel, mate. How are you, buddy? How's things?
Great to be on. Yeah, I'm doing really good, thanks. I'm doing good. Yeah, happy. It's not. I can't believe it's been 2.5 months since a home win, but we'll probably get back to that later. But it feels so good. Although I do. Does it feel
good to be like, you know, a couple of, obviously the cup's obviously going terribly over that sort of week before last, but 2 back-to-back wins in the Premier League, 2 clean sheets, and also, if I'm not mistaken, the best lead, the single goal. I don't know how to say this. Right words in the right order. Best holding on to a lead for 85 minutes against Manchester United. Best season's outcomes against Manchester United for, I think you have to go all the way back to the 1920s, don't you, to see a time when we had 3 victories against the most successful team of all time. Pretty good stuff, Jim, right?
It is, yeah. I'm really happy. It was, like you said, though, it's bizarre seeing Spurs and Man United where they are right now. I think we're in completely different scenarios, despite being in similar parts of the table. We're in a much healthier situation to look forward to, but it is weird seeing us go to battle in that circumstance. It really is.
Yeah. It was. If those two teams are the Europa League favourites, which we are going to talk about in a little while, of course, that's the final topic of the day. Then I'm not sure if that's an indictment of the English population's tendency to waste money on betting, or is it just a case of the Europa League standard really isn't that great? And listen, if I'm entirely honest, I do actually think that Tottenham could do bits with a returning with a returning form and a returning roster. I think that Tottenham can do things in this competition. So all to play for. And if he does win it, then it will be our most successful season in forever. And I don't think you can sack Ange. So maybe me pivoting to Levy out was the worst thing I could have possibly done right at the time when everything was going to go right. You know, like when you're selling a stock after it's been hammered like 40, 50%, and you're like, oh, I can't take any more burn. I've got to sell it. And then the next day it just rallies up in your grid. Yeah, I've been there too many times, too many times. You've got to hold on a little bit longer. Good times around the corner. Craig, I'm going to start with you, mate, in the first topic of the day, which is, of course, I don't want to dwell on it too long because this was last week's news, but the protest, the change for Tottenham, Levy out, a massive momentum shift in that whole conversation over the last, couple of months, I guess, it's been building. Change for Tottenham, Billy and Jay are the two faces that I've come across. Very eloquent guys, very respectful guys, doing a really good job getting around the houses, putting together via Twitter, help with some PR, publicity, BBC, TalkSport, talking about it, Sky Sports. And for sure, it was the biggest protest I've seen in my time as a Tottenham fan, a Tottenham match-going fan. I was incorrect when I gave my initial predictions on the numbers, but they were probably, some people were saying 3,000. Probably somewhere, certainly north of 2,000. And really impressive, really respectful. What's your thoughts, Craig? I honestly have no idea where you sit on the Levy conversation, and I don't know, how you were feeling going into the protest. Were you in support of it? Do you have, I'll let you go where you'd like with it, mate. Essentially, Levy out. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think you're dead right. I think that's certainly the biggest protest I've ever seen as far as numbers go. I thought it was very well organised. We had the two guys on the Spurs Chat podcast actually just before. I wasn't on that show, but Chris was on with Gary, and they had him on. Spoke very well, really pushing the message, like, peaceful protest, nothing untoward. We had a few idiots in there. One was walking along with a Levy in sign, which probably didn't do himself any favours doing that. Whether that was true or whether it was a wind up, who knows? But I was all for the protest. I thought it was needed, and I think it won't be the last one. As I say, certainly the most amount of people I've ever seen. It's difficult to gauge numbers, but I would personally put it between, I think you're right, between 2,000 and 3,000. Difficult to tell how many people who are just walking to the stadium or walking in the crowd, but I know the police were behind the back of it, so kind of to
That's where I was. That's where I was sort of doing my interviews from. So from my viewpoint, it didn't look anywhere near as big as when I saw it from the. I don't know if someone was up a lamppost or if it was a drone or what it was, but it was from that angle. It looks huge,
Yeah, absolutely. It was big enough to make the board and probably Daniel Levy feel uncomfortable and hopefully sit up and take notice. Where am I on Levy? I've never really sat in any particular camp. I've said on the channel before, I think it's time for the board to go. There is an element of careful what you wish for with it, I'll be honest. And however you feel about, like I know you did a video on the other day, as did a lot of people, about the Qatar possible links.
We'll talk about that in a second as well. I forgot to mention that's definitely part of the show as well. So
so where do I stand on Levy? I've always said I haven't got a problem with him as a businessman. I think he's absolutely fantastic what he's done with the club. I just think he meddles a bit too much in the football side for me. If he could step aside and just say, right, Daniel, you're not doing this, but you're doing this, and there's no way you're getting anywhere near this side of it, and have this injection of cash and have somebody else run it, perhaps that might work. But it's difficult to say whether I'm sitting a foot in either camp, I suppose, at the moment. But I wouldn't be crying if Enoch and Levy sold, put it that way. That's
to anyone in particular. I always ask this question, especially on the protests. I think a lot of people were kind of saying it's time for change. And even some people went to the notion of anyone but him will do, which to me, I think is just absolutely madness when you can look around the some of the absolute terrible stories that you're seeing across, not just in the Premier League, but across the footballing world. There's some absolute disastrous classes in ownership. But obviously, the big story of the week or for the last few months, really, Craig, is Qatar. Now we don't know how substantial, how substantiated they are. Lots of stories out from the Guardian. Lots of people on Twitter pretending to be ITKs or part of the family or whatever, and who knows. Whether any of it's true, but is that and I said this all week for what it's worth on the channel. I've been doing a lot of shows with Johnny, who's not afraid to kind of to get stuck into politics as well. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but I think it's one that fan channels should have to kind of decipher how they feel about, the kind of grey zone between the club's heritage, Qatar's relationship with certain organizations, money just as a, relationships with certain, I guess, vulnerable groups, if you like, and the way that those stories are, the stories that you hear from that part of the world. Is Qatar an answer that you'd be okay with, Craig?
It's funny you say that, because I've asked myself that question. And I don't want to get splinters in my arse, but I'm kind of on the fence with it, if I'm honest, because I can see this side of it, like you say, about all the issues that come with Qatar, if you like, in inverted commas. But I can also see those glory lights of getting trophies and, millions and millions and millions of pounds plugged into the club. Would people be quick to forget that if we get a trophy in the cabinet? I would say yes.
Definitely the people that don't have a direct dog in that fight, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And so would I be on board with it? I think if they're right for the club, which is that $1 million question, isn't it? Quite literally, we don't know is the honest answer. If they're buying Tottenham or let's say they bought it outright, I think it'd be an incredible difficult deal to do. But if they bought it outright, you're looking at billions, aren't you? Are they going to get a return on that money? Probably not. So what is it, their plaything or whatever, like Abramovich was with Chelsea? Who knows? But something needs to change at Tottenham for us to progress. And whether that be a stake or whether the selling of the club, one of those two things has definitely got to happen.
Yeah, look, I don't necessarily disagree. I think that, in fact, you know what? Everyone knows my take on this one. So I'm going to bring Jim in. Jim, the protests overall, I've seen a lot of your videos on this one, mate. I think you kind of lean into the context as best you can as well. You like to give both sides and discuss the various risks around, what can be different outcomes. So I'll let you go again. Same sort of open mic night, mate. Where do you want to take it? Overall, Qatar as well. Slide that in there somewhere.
Yeah, so like I was at the game as well when the protests were going on and went to check it out. My view on it was very much that we'd use our channel to let people know about it, but I wasn't exclusively being a part of it, if that makes sense, because I'm kind of on the fence with a lot of this stuff. I don't really want to take sides. I have an opinion that stretches a bit deeper, I think. What I would say is well done to those who organised it. You put together, you're the first group who put together some branding and messaging and a collective movement and managed to bring quite a fractious group of different people around the club who don't want to align on the protest together for the first time. And I think that's why you achieved great numbers. I think it was, at least 500. That's probably very much undercalling it. So yeah, well done to them. And it was all peaceful. I didn't, the Levy in thing, I thought with the guy with the banner, I thought, I get it.
There's always one, isn't there? There's always one though. It doesn't matter what side. It doesn't matter what side of the conversation you're on. There are donuts everywhere in life, Jim.
Yeah, I feel like even though it's a bit of banter, a bit of fun, I just like, why do that? Because there's no animosity going on. They're being peaceful about it. Why stoke the fire a little bit? But okay, whatever. Nothing major happened, so who cares? He was just having a laugh. End of. We can move on from that. In terms of what was driving the protests, I do think there's been a lot. Firstly, you can't blame anyone for wanting to march the streets outside the club when you're sat in, 15th in the league. I think you can understand why a large portion of your fan base can get frustrated to that level. There's elements, though, of the protest that I think our fans are misled by in the media, and it stokes the fire and causes more frustration. And the media have clocked on to this percentage of wages thing, and they're way oversimplifying how finances work in football, because you can easily go, look what happens. Daniel Levy has a reputation for not spending money in the media. I can associate low wages to low success, and I can associate that to a buyout. And they kind of to wanting to sell the club for a best price. And I can make it kind of insinuate he's this big greedy figure that you can put on a banner and make your lives easier when you want to jump on that movement. But I feel there's massive misunderstandings on, and I wish the media would put more effort into like providing the full context to like why our situation is that. I think people think it can be a bit like a game of Football Manager where your transfer budget's on the side, and when you sell a player for 100 million, it goes up by 100 million. And when you drop someone, it goes down. There's this sliding scale of like how much you want to put into wages or the transfer budget. I don't think people realize that like when you look at like our wages from last year, and they're 42% now, aren't they? Like when we sold Kane goes onto the club's revenue. Like when you sell players, that goes to a club's revenue. So revenue goes up when you sell players and your wage ratio drops, but you won't continue to get continue to get that income for those players every year. So we've gone through a phase of everyone saying offload the deadwood, Lo Celso and Ndombele, Aurea, all these players, and then unfortunately Kane is certainly not deadwood. We got rid of all those in quick succession, and then the inevitable consequence of that is wages fall, income rises because you're selling, and you're bringing these players in. I'm sure Sean will be back. So yeah, that happened, and I think that leaves us in this season in particular having that ratio at a rate that's above, that's, you know, a more frustrating level than it normally would be. Where the frustration will be for me if it doesn't change from that position. And I think another thing we need to kind of consider as well is under the new finance rules that are coming in, you can only spend a percentage of your revenue on transfers, wages, and agent fees.
Right.
We're at a stage where we're trying to bring in as many new squad players as we can at a younger age. So we want to use as much of that percentage as we can on transfer fees, not on wages. We can go and drop big money on 2 or 3 signings and get our average wage up to 60%. But our ability to spend in the transfer market on transfers will significantly drop as a result of that. So I think like that full context when it's given in, it makes me feel that maybe the frustrations are more about where we are in the league, and that's just an easy thing to tag onto it as a reason that's been used over and over and over again. And there's no evidence at all to suggest we're doing it to attract a buyer. I don't think if Qatar buy us, they're going to care about our wage bill.
100%.
Like they're here to fuel the club with as much revenue as possible. They're not here to get a great price. They're in it for ulterior motives, not for profit. They're not.
100%. I'll just take that what you said there and run with it a little bit. I completely agree and subscribe to that notion. I do think that mainstream media generally, not just in sport, but in all walks of sort of hot topics, I think it's a combination of just because you're famous doesn't mean that you're knowledgeable on certain topics. And I think you see so many examples of footballers that are, you know, employed to be pundits that talk about things that they don't really understand and sort of jump on board bandwagons that they're not really sure what they're saying about, and very little people want to challenge them, very little people in the studio. And also I think that there's just the consequences of mainstream media having, you know, advertising breaks, and you know, they have to fit everything into an hour show where they've got 6 topics to get through. So they don't really have as much time as fan channels or as what you can do in alternative media to sort of dig into the, you know, to get into the meat that's on the bone, so to speak, and go through the where the devil is, right, in the detail. Because I think that there's, even just on that, you mentioned about the wage thing. People that come on this channel, they and I hear them on so many other channels talking about things like, oh, the wage bill was dropped by, you know, I think it's 38 million or 40 million, whatever it was last year. And not all the things that you mentioned there, Jim, about, you know, revenue goes up and also wages go down, therefore the ratio is skewed both sides. But and it's a really good point. But on top of that, they overlook the simple things like Tanguy and Ndombele. That was £10 million in salary that wasn't like, it wasn't dropped, it was just paid off as an abnormal one-off payment that is therefore no longer paid. So you paid £10 million up front, but that's just a £10 million swing immediately on the numbers. But there's nobody there to kind of to pick anybody up on that fact, because the vast majority of people, you know, would prefer to lean towards the boogeyman as the root of the problems as to why Tottenham, you know, have struggled as they have for so long to find success. I ultimately go back to this. I've been saying it forever. I think that whilst he may be a bottleneck on ambition at the club, if you want to use that word, ultimately I think that a lot of these things won't even matter if the rules around not just APT but PSR, squad cost ratios, anchoring, if all of those things are up in the air to the point where Manchester City can not just, you know, sort of cast shade on some of the legality, but actually win these court cases. And judging by their behavior in the transfer market, you'd probably imagine that if they can find the legality issues with things as simple as APT, then they probably have found a way to wriggle themselves out of the 3 components of the 115 charges. We'll see about that, but I would imagine that they'll probably have a get out of jail card there as well.
Don't you think it's also a bit of a shame that, like, if we even go back, it was basically just before Abramovich was the first major figure in the Premier League to change it all, but fans didn't have to understand this stuff. We didn't have to understand finances and rules and accountancy in football, but it's actually because of the influx of these teams where the media are clapping and encouraging because, you know, it brings a Haaland into the Premier League and great for broadcasting revenue and attention and all that stuff, that suddenly we're having to we're now watching it shift, not just from having to understand finance. Watch now as it shifts into understanding legal. Like City fans have pretty much got some basic knowledge around the legal complexities of sport now. And it's like, why on earth? I'm learning more about finance and legal requirements in sport than I would have going to do a bloody course on it. It's just to follow my team. Have a basic understanding. I just want to watch the players and enjoy the game and just get excited for each transfer window. It's just changed so much. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of times the people that have a resentment towards me for talking about this stuff. I mean, I personally find it fascinating. I love it anyway, but the amount of people that say, he's a spreadsheet merchant, football's about football, not about the accounts. We're all accountants now. It is a shame, like I feel like I am taking a part-time course in law to be able to understand where the loopholes are and stuff. And but at the same time, the more you know, I guess, is the more you know, right? And I think that it's an ever-present trend towards, I guess a future that's going to be football is and probably will always now be a part of the who's got the deepest pockets wins, which leads me, guys, onto the next kind of segment. Craig, I want to ask you this. I touched on whether if you can't beat them, join them with regards to Qatar. But look, there are other examples of ownership out there that don't necessarily require, again, at the risk of offending people, that kind of oil, moral hazard, whatever, out in the Middle East. Sir Jim Ratcliffe was an option that was looked at. People were talking about him coming to Tottenham at one point last year. He's walked into the hot seat or part of the hot seat consortium at Manchester United. And I haven't got their numbers specifically in front of me, but I do just want to call out a few of the kind of the takeaways from their numbers that were released yesterday. They're £1 billion in debt, just under 998 million in debt. They've spent, under the Glaziers, £1 billion in interest rate payments. They spent £37 million just in interest or debt, financing debt from October until December. They spent £7 million to recruit and then fire within 3 months Dan Ashworth. They spent £10 million to sack Eric Ten Hag. They only saved £4 million by sacking 100 people, a lot of whom survive on food stamps, allegedly. So now they can't have a decent 2025 in all likelihood. And as you're a Manchester United fan, the team that, Gary Neville always says, this is Manchester United, like the biggest team in the world, the most successful team in the world, depending on how you value trophies. They couldn't pay £8 million for Matisse Tell on deadline day because they didn't have enough money, and Tottenham did. But they could find £7 million to pay off the compensation to Newcastle for Dan Ashworth, and then sack him and give him compensation of £3 million for 3 months' work, of which he did nothing. You compare that and contrast that to Arsenal, who, as I say, £600 million in revenue released today, Craig. And again, I don't want to get bogged down too much in the finances, but essentially the takeaway from Kieran Maguire is that they can do whatever they want in the summer. They spent £250 million last season, 260 the year before, I think it was. And because of their insanely, successful run in the Champions League and the fact that they've already made, I think, 90 odd million euros just by getting to the halfway stage, they're probably going to get through against one of the Dutch teams in the next round. The revenue streams continue to pile in for the Cronkies, who don't have the ability to fill the stadium with Beyonce. Both of those are different options, right? Different options to kind of Middle Eastern money. But you can see there that there's risk and reward, right? If you pick the wrong guy, and you're going to find that your club is stripped of its assets, the debt payments continue and are amplified. The ability to, find some sort of ROI is the ever-present priority, and ultimately the team is going to suffer. Craig, I mean, I don't know where you want to go with it, mate, but Manchester United versus Arsenal, it's a tale of two different ownership models that are both somewhere in between what Daniel Levy is doing at Tottenham. Is there a lot of risk associated with moving to the new?
I think what I would say about Qatar, if the Qatar money comes in, these people are obviously very successful businessmen because they wouldn't have got where they've got to. Yes, you could say that about Ratcliffe as well. But Manchester United as a club is an absolute basket case anyway. They're in debt before he took over. The Glaziers refused to sell. I don't know so much about Manchester United finances, but I know they've been in trouble for a long, long time. The stadium roof leaks. It needs knocking down, rebuilding. The training ground, Carrington, needs updating. It needs a hell of a lot of money ploughed into it. And I know, obviously, money to build stadiums, everything is kind of separate from the PSR and FFP and all that. I think you know a million times more about that than Sean. But there's a lot of trouble at Manchester, is what I'm trying to say. Whereas Arsenal, obviously, they've paid their stadium off, and the Kroenkes are running the club pretty well, you have to say. With them being able to spend whatever they want in the summer, you could argue probably that Tottenham could as well, to a degree. We've certainly got well over 100 million to spend should we need to. I'd imagine probably 150, 200.
If we wanted to really go for it, we could spend and be okay. Yeah,
absolutely. And then you've got the offloading of certain players, which we could go through. Everybody's got their own ideas on that. Look, Daniel Levy, as I say, brilliant businessman, but we need a change. We do need a change at Spurs for us to push to that next level. He's kind of proved that I think he's taken the club as far as he can take it. So it needs this change to come about. But again, it comes back to the Qatari thing. I think I would quickly forget about, we're so, we got short memories, football fans, haven't we? If the Qatari money comes in and we win something, then everybody's going to forget where that came from. But there's just something in the back of my mind, like I say, careful what you wish for, but anything is a risk. And do I get a say in it? Not at all. I think if the money's on the table, Simon Jordan said many times, if the money's on the table, then Daniel's going to take it, but it's got to be the right price.
Would you be happy with him to stay on? In that Guardian article, and it never really divulged what it meant by it, but it said essentially that if the Qatar consortium are looking to invest, the prerequisite part of the deal that Daniel Levy won't move away from is that he wants to be kept on in some regard for however long. And the article suggests that they would be amenable to that outcome because they could lean into his expertise. And what worries me a little bit is what expertise are we talking about? Are we talking about his expertise at generating revenue off the pitch? If so, then great. But then why do we need the Qataris? Because he's already an expert at that. And if not, if they're looking to say, well, we want his expertise in footballing matters, then I think everybody can universally probably agree that that's the weakest part of his game. And so are we bringing in people that know even less about how to negotiate a transfer, how to spot value, how to listen to the right people, how to hire and fire the right people in the right manner? Is that expert, that open word expert, is that grey area a bit of a concern for you, Craig? Or are you okay with Daniel Levy being a part of the future, even if ENIC do sell?
I think. Look, you'd have to have some form of handover period when you're doing massive deals like that. Anyway, Daniel Levy's not going to just sell one day and then disappear off into the night. It doesn't work like that. So there will be a handover period, whether he's there for 6 months, a year, whatever. I think it's probably a sensible move, if I'm honest, if they do that, as long as Daniel Levy stays away from the football side. If he's talking about everything else that goes along with Tottenham, I haven't got a problem with it. But he's always been the meddling in the football side that he's got most wrong. As many have said before, I'm not saying anything that none of us know. If Daniel Levy had signed Daniel Levy would have sacked Daniel Levy. So many people have said that, but it's so true, because his performance, I don't know if anybody does his yearly appraisal, whether Joe Lewis does his yearly appraisal, but it must be pretty poor. You know what I mean? But he's made some errors. Everybody makes errors. We're all human, but crikey, he has made a lot. And admittedly, it's not Daniel Levy's fault necessarily where the recruitment went wrong. He couldn't have, we was all excited when we signed Tanguy and Ndombele, when we signed Lo Celso to a degree. The two what was that? Well over 100 million probably for both of them, and both of them are flops. So, where we've got lucky in the past, if you ask me, we probably got lucky with Ericsson with the Bale money, but he was probably the only one other than, you could argue, Lamela, that was a success. We won't bother going back to that because we all know how that turned out. And that the team, oddly enough, the team Ericsson played under, I think, is where they got luckiest the most with Pochettino and that team. I think everything just came together, the stars aligned, and it was that close to getting over the line, as we all know. So I think we probably started to peak earlier than anybody could have ever wished for, and they just didn't back Poch when he needed the backing, and who knows where we would have been now. Because I think, personally, had we won that Champions League, it would have been a catalyst to push us on and on and on, and that wouldn't have been the first trophies. But sadly, it's kind of a sliding doors moment, and then everything changed. So, where am I with Levy was the question, really, and him staying on. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I think there's got to be a line.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Jim, I'm gonna move the conversation forward in a second, but just it feels a little bit like with the Daniel Levy being the next Daniel Levy, it feels a little bit similar to Harry. Are we eventually going to replace Harry Kane? Maybe with Harry Kane, which is a story I guess we're going to come to when we get to the future summer transfer business. But yeah, Craig, you mentioned there Pochettino being, I guess, the recipient of a bit of luck. Obviously, a lot of hard work, walking into a youth-centric model of players that all kind of grew together and were sensational. Jim, I'd like to ask you about Ange. I know from you in the WhatsApp group, I think you spend a lot of time defending Ange. I see your videos, you spend a lot of time defending Ange. I think a lot of people in our WhatsApp group obviously are maybe pivoting away, and probably you're maybe on your own in that regard on the defensive side of Ange. With that, being said, we are on the back of two league wins on the bounce now, two clean sheets, and things are looking slightly better. Do you see Ange being here? How do you feel about Ange? Do you see Ange being here all the way through to the end of the season? And as I say, Craig mentioned Poch's name. He would be my next choice of manager. I don't know how likely that could be before the World Cup, but if things pick up and we win the Europa League, then I think you've got the answer for me there. I think he guarantees his value until the end of next season. You can't sack a guy who wins the Europa League, so he'll be here next season. And then for me, if at the end of the contract, I think you would probably look to bring Poch in for my take. But how do you see it, Jim?
Yeah, like on the Poch bit, I think that's an inevitable love story that hasn't quite finished, and we're destined to see it end badly or fantastically. Everyone says they know it, just feels like unfinished business with that. I don't think that's going to happen until after the World Cup. He's managing the national team, hosting the World Cup. It ties in with when I think Postecoglou's contract ends. So that to me just seems like a story that may naturally unfold over those times. But anyway, to kind of Ange, I don't think he's perfect. I think he's realised things coming into the Premier League, and I know I still find it frustrating. I guess some bits I get defensive on with it is kind of seeing people go, he only plays one way, and then they bring up the Chelsea highlights from 18 months ago, and I'm like, are we still doing these highlights? They're actually on Sky, they're on every YouTube, they're on every Twitch. I'm like, it was 18
It's not even a highlight.
ago.
It's just a screenshot of that one particular defensive line on the halfway.
Of one, and at the time, by the way, we were all loving it, and we'd actually nearly got a point in that game. A lot of people forget
Eric Dyer was a toenail offside, wasn't he? Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it's like what he should have done with 9 men, being 2 goals down, was put a load of people behind the ball. And it's like, what? Anyway, that was ages ago, and I think that's
never. I don't think any team has ever won a game or salvaged a point being down against 11 men when you have 9 in the Premier League. As far as I'm pretty sure that stat's accurate.
Yeah.
So what were we hoping we were going to achieve by doing it a different way?
Mm-hmm. But then again, there's fair argument for saying in other games earlier on in his tenure, we went for it. We really went for it. Perhaps when we could have gone somewhere in between. And I get that he's saying, I can't do that right now. People will lose faith in my principles and what I stand for and all that stuff. So look, he definitely made errors. I think he relied too much on his senior players when he first came in, and they got their bodies wore down and they got injuries. And then he learned his lesson, but it was too late. He didn't have players to rotate with. He was supported late in a transfer window. I don't think he got all the players he wanted in the summer. I think he just said he was happy because he knows that calling out your boss goes one way typically in the media. So he's a very positive guy who just says, look, I focus on what I can control. I can't control that situation. I'll just say it's fine and move forwards. But and I feel there's a lot of things he gets unfair stigma for. The things that I guess have been disproven but are still used is, we spoke to Anton, who was his fitness coach at Spurs, fitness coach for Poch, fitness coach for AVB, fitness coach for Redknapp, and Postecoglou's head of sports science, so he knows more about that side of things, and he has all those coaches and the methodologies. He was very clear. Ange knows more about sports science than all of those guys. Like, really? He is not. I didn't hear that. Okay, yeah. He is. Ange is the most qualified coach he's worked with in terms of sports science as a head coach. He knows this stuff. Part of his success has been built on knowing so much about it. You can push players to limits other managers can't quite get to. And you have to have a very good rotation policy and all that stuff. He did say as well, Poch was excellent at it as well. And Jesus Perez is very underrated. You see the scary eyes and you think he's just Poch's best mate. Also a very, very intelligent guy, apparently. Very good into sports science. And Poch brings him places for a reason, right? So Ange
is the most qualified coach in specific areas?
In certain areas, but not obviously. I didn't go into specifics of what areas he's better than Poch at. He just said he was one of the most qualified people in sports science that he had worked with. And when I compared him to the others, he said that Ange was at the top. Whether he meant level with Poch or not, I don't know. Watch the video and you let me know what you think. Anyway.
I have to. Cause it's interesting because I think a lot of people, myself included, actually say, is he a coach? Is he a manager? And then recently I've said he's neither. He's a salesman. And maybe that's harsh. But I kind of, when you see him not doing much in the way of kind of touchline coaching, when times are tough, when you're when suddenly, everything falls apart 10 minutes in or whatever, and you're looking for a bit of, direction, especially if there's an absence of it on the pitch and you don't see it, you kind of lead yourself to think, well, he doesn't really come out of the training room or on the training pitch too often. Like, so where are these demonstrations of his coaching? And he's certainly not a manager in terms of he doesn't have the influence around the club. So what's left?
So that was the other point. I asked two coaches this. One who's got his A license with Kieran McKenna and worked in the Premier League. And I asked also Anton, who'd worked with Ange, ABB, etc., etc. And I said, like, what about this theory that he only turns up to the pitch side training and gets hands-on involved 2 or 3 times a week? It's like, that's what every single manager does. When they can't be on the training pitch all day, they're in meetings with the chairman, their scout, the head of sports science. They're helping hire people into the coaching staff. They go into a briefing each morning. They tell the coaches and everyone else what they want the players to be drilled on. And then they go out and execute on that. And they'll sit back from a big distance and they'll watch on. The people will come in and they'll gather feedback and they'll set more instructions. And maybe once or twice a week, they'll pop out and be a part of the training, but they'll still be enabling people they believe are more qualified than themselves to take on these things. So I said Redknapp apparently was the same. He used to apparently get a chair out and just sit at the back. It's like, yeah, but he was an older guy, and they all do take a slightly more hands-off approach in that sense. So I feel there's a few stereotypes I think he has, and there's also some I think a bit harsh, like he looks down too much in interviews. To me, that's a guy who thinks really, really hard and carefully about answers, and he often gets credit for them being witty. But I think those are the cogs going around in his head. He's like, how can I answer this in a way that's not going to bite me in the arse? And he's messed that up a few times. I think he's made plenty of mistakes.
He's definitely said a few things that you go, oh, why? Why are you doing this again? You're dying on the hill of something that's unnecessary. The
trophy one, like we all know, that was, why say that? You're right. You have won a trophy over in your second, but you just gave Sky the bait. That's exactly what they wanted you to say. And he's made plenty of errors. He's done subs too late in games. He hasn't rotated certain players enough until it was too late. He didn't put Spence in the Europa League squad. So I'm not saying he's some golden goose that doesn't make mistakes, but I think he's constantly trying to learn. He's constantly trying to adapt. And the thing I like most about him is he seems to take a long-term approach with us. He's always looking at, how is this club going to be set up for the next 5-10 years for success? And the Celtic fans said the same. They said, he acts like he's going to be here forever, even though he's not going to be here forever. He's only going to be here for a short time. So I just don't feel I feel there's more upside in saying we're 18 months into a project that hasn't started as well as we'd hoped. But we may as well see this out now, because there's just enough there for me to say, you know what? It could still turn a corner. I'm not at that point where I don't think it could. And I think the upheaval of restarting when there's no... People want Areola. And I'm like, do you want to replace Ange with Ange Light? Like, you're still going to have high press intensity football with a lack of plan B, blah, 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 all those things you don't like. Still going to be there. It's just a new shiny face and shiny name on the microphone. If you want a more pragmatic, generalist type coach, sure, maybe that's your argument and you want to try that. Fair enough. But I just think let's just see this one out. We've done really well on the youth recruitment. Like I say to people, would you sell Archie Gray for the price you bought him for? Absolutely not. Jed Spence, that's a funny one, Craig, you're mentioning. Like, Levy on his topic has made so many bad decisions, but I think he doesn't get credit for some good ones as well. And one of them is he signed Tottenham's best player in Jed Spence. Everyone complained that Levy was too involved in football and he insisted on Jed Spence. Ended up being our best player. And he did go out and handpick Luka Modric as well, if you believe what you read. Gareth Bale, this young guy from Southampton that Redknapp wanted to sell, he insisted we keep him. So there's been examples of where he's got things right in the recruitment, but he's definitely got more wrong than he's got right. And I think that he got up until the new stadium, he got most of his decisions right as a chairman, and then he got them catastrophically wrong ever since. And I do align a little bit with that. We had Kamoli, and then we had who was the next director of football we brought in? Was it Kamoli the last one before that?
No, it was Kamoli was followed by the absolute bozo who spent all our money. What's his name? Someone in the chat, help us out here. Who was after Kamoli?
But what happened there was, I remember Poch came in and it was very clear in the media, I will not work for the director of football.
Steve somebody?
Steve Hitchens. Well done.
Yeah.
That's it. Well done.
Poch made it very clear, I will not work for the director of football. And I think that was a mistake by us. I think we should try to get a better director of football, not remove that model, because other clubs, all successful ones, have them. And that was a bad move, but we took what the head coach wanted. And Poch, again, he wasn't backed at that key moment, and I put that on Levy. He could have found the money if he wanted to. But equally, Poch signed 26 players, 2 broke into the first team. And to me, that is also a manager who insisted on handpicking all his players, getting them catastrophically wrong time and time again. And then as a result, you get to a point and you go, shit, we're desperate here. We really need more players. And it's too late. And even then we picked the wrong ones.
And we walked into $1 billion of debt, right? At the right. I've said this 1,000 times. I would say that as much as it was a wonderful thing to get to the Champions League final, it fundamentally reset the expectations of the fan base. New stadium, you got the Champions League final. Now's the time to kick on. But to the largest extent, same with Arsenal. It took them 8 years to find their first trophy after moving into the Emirates. It also, Arteta was just an absolute, much as it kills me to say it, you have to have so much respect for the guy because he maintained their relative position at the top and being competitive, despite the fact that they had to sell all of the best players to their rivals because they were paying down the debt on the stadium. And we found a different way of sort of figuring that stuff out. But ultimately, like I say, the expectations doing this and the ability to spend in the short term doing this. And then you have, like you say, the kind of nuances of the situation with regards trusting the wrong guy and putting your eggs in a certain basket, and it leaves you with maybe the outcome that you have. However, I think that those things are starting to change. I think that he's at least listening to Fabio Paratici with the youth-centric model, and I think that there's some really good green shoots there. Craig, what's your take on Ange, my man? It's the ever-present topic of Tottenham fans at the moment. Who's to blame? Is it Ange? Is it Daniel Levy? Why we are where we are? Where do you sit on Ange? Are you happy to see him, throughout? If we win the league, obviously, or win the Europa League, it might be difficult to justify sacking the guy. But even if we don't, are you still on board him? And if so, until when?
Yeah, I mean, I've asked this question to myself quite a lot over the last few months, as probably most of us have. I've kind of flitted between he's got to go to no, we've got to stick with him. Where I am at the moment is I think we've got to stick with him till at least the end of the season, then see how the land lies. It is absolutely pointless, in my opinion, sacking Ange now. We know he went out of both cups in the space of 4 days. Okay, we're still in the Europa. We're not got a chance for the league. Obviously, the best chance we've got, which I know we'll come on to later, is just climbing that table. Now we're getting players back, 2 wins back to back. Obviously, suddenly it starts to look a bit rosier. But I do genuinely think if we get all our players back and keep the key ones fit, we have got a chance in this Europa. I think somebody put in the chat that Galatasaray went out tonight of the Europa League and Porto. So that is pretty huge. I don't know if that's it's true. He's put it in the chat, but I haven't looked at the other results. Obviously, we'll know tonight. One of the 2 teams we're actually likely to be playing in the next round, that should be finalised. And the draw is it tomorrow? Is it tomorrow, the draw?
Yeah, tomorrow at midday UK time.
Right, so then we'll know. So we kind of get our path forward in the competition, I believe, won't we? We'll know.
It's going to be AZ Alkmaar or Sociedad, and
Sociedad.
I don't know which team of those 2, Craig, is. Sociedad were an absolute beast last year, but they had their whole system was built around the double pivot with Zubamendi and Mikel Merino. And what Mikel Merino went to Arsenal hasn't really set the world alight. He's done well, like last week he did well, but generally speaking, he hasn't been a sensation. And Real Sociedad and even Zubamendi, that was one of the best midfielders in European football last year, doesn't seem to be quite as good without his pal. So I don't know if they're like a yin and a yang that work better together. There's rumours that he'll be going to Arsenal anyway, but that's obviously not going to happen until the end of this Europa League campaign. So I don't know if Sociedad, on paper, you'd probably say I'd rather play Alkmaar than Sociedad, but Ace and Alkmaar are not they're no morons on the pitch. They're a very good team.
No.
You know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, whatever will be, will be. We'll draw who we draw. But I genuinely think, like I say, we've got a chance to go a long way in that Europa. I really do. Obviously, yeah, as the comment says there from Paul, Galatasaray being knocked out is huge. Obviously, we know we struggled against them. All right, we didn't have a full team, and it was an absolute cauldron when we went to Galatasaray Stadium. But I genuinely think we've got a chance in that. As for how long Ange stays, I think you're right. If he gets us a trophy, then you can't sack him. You've got to have him in place for next season. Does Ange's contract run till the end of next season? Then is that?
Yeah,
is
and
that...
I think there's also an option, a 1 year option. So I think it's 3+1. I think I'm not wrong. I think it's 3+1. Yeah.
The interesting thing with that, how often do you see managers see out their contract to the end and then just disappear off into the night? It never happens, does it? Unless you're Alex Ferguson.
He never has, has he? If he stays for the entirety of next season, I think that's his longest stint since he was manager of the Australian youth team, I think, or something. So like it's you have to go back quite a long way for him. He doesn't stay around for more than 2 years, or 2.5 years usually. So
and I think the stars align then. If that does happen and he's still here next season, I think Poch coming back after the World Cup, you can kind of see it happening. And if that ties in even with this injection of cash and Levy moving on, because I don't think it was Daniel Levy that Poch had the issue with. I think I heard, and I don't know how true this is, Jesus Perez didn't get on particularly well with Levy, but both of them didn't get on well with Donna Cullen. But these are all rumours, let me just say.
Oh, she's a problem, mate. That woman. Sorry. Like I say, feel what you want to feel about Daniel Levy, but I think that lady has got a lot to say, and he seems to lend his ear. She's a PR girl, but the club has got the worst PR in the game when it comes to just like reading the room with certain things. And I think she had a lot to say around the from what I've read and what I've heard through the grapevine, that she had a lot to say with regards the architectural kind of pivots that were happening with the stadium. So I think that she's just a little bit too close, and I think she's a bit problematic.
Yeah, and obviously she's part of the board, isn't she? So if this takeover goes through, then I can't imagine anybody wanting her to stay on.
No.
Would it just be Levy on his own? You think it would be? But I think if that happens and Ange stays, and I do like Ange. I really have enjoyed. It's easy to forget. I think I agree with Jim. A lot of what Jim said about his points about Ange, and we're all quick to forget how much we enjoyed it. Right when Ange first took charge, and I've got a good friend who's a Celtic fan. He come on Chris's channel and give us a really good rundown of what we can expect from Ange. And I must admit, we was all really excited when my friend Ali was talking about it, what to expect. He said, we never stop. And he said, you won't sit on a 2-0 lead. He said, they'll still be going, try and get in a third and a fourth and a fifth. And that's kind of what plays out. All right, it hasn't worked a lot of the time, but that is the philosophy, isn't it? And I do remember after the World Cup, watching England, not the World Cup, sorry, the Euros, we sat down to watch Spurs' first friendly, and my son said to me, he said, oh God, Dad, how much I've missed Spurs than watching England, the slow sort of build up and the defensive play, and then suddenly seeing this bang, bang, bang. So I've enjoyed mostly under Ange and watching our games. I think it's entertaining, but
it's definitely entertaining. Yeah,
we haven't got the haven't got the trophies in the cabinet yet. So I'm not Ange out. I just hope he can do something with us for the remaining games this season.
Yeah, look, I mean, I had an Apple Watch pre my hack. I had an Apple Watch that when I would wear it at the game, I can't remember the last time that I didn't get the warning saying your heart rate has been above 140 BPM for the last 15 minutes, starting at 3:01 p.m. on a Saturday. You know, it was a constant thing from the get-go. It was brilliant to watch. Not always brilliant outcomes, but it depends what you want out of football. Like, you know, for me, I said this 1,000 times, if someone offered me George Graham style football, you know, where it was like 1-0, or even Mourinho towards the end, where we'd score an early goal and then we'd sit back and try and hang on for 80 minutes and inevitably towards the end always concede in the last 5. that's just not what I want out of my team. You know, I want to be entertained. Like that has to be the cornerstone of what, for me, watching football is about, and everything else has to be after that. If winning is all that's important at any cost, and that cost includes horrendous, tiresome, dreary football, then that's just not the way that for me, it's like the cart before the horse. You know, I think the horse has to be exciting and then the cart can come later. But that's not for everyone. Blaine, Devlin with the super chat. Big up, Blaine. Sorry, mate. It's taken us 50 odd minutes to get to it. You know how it works, my man, but I really do appreciate you, buddy. He said, I need this after 2 days standing presenting to a load of my colleagues. Hope you handled that one, mate. I know we were talking about it before you did it. I hope you enjoyed it, embraced it, mate. Doing live presentations is sometimes a nervy affair, but it's rewarding afterwards if you smash it. My knees feel like I'm an 85-year-old arthritis sufferer. Big up as always, Sean, and great to see Jim and Craig on the channel. Thank you, mate. Thank you, buddy Blaine. I hope you're okay, mate. Get yourself some ice on those knees and settle down with a beer. And we will hopefully give you something to enjoy this evening, mate. But love you, Craig. Thanks. Love you, Blaine. Thank you for the support of the show, my man. And also we have Joshua saying, how do you see the takeover going, minor or full? Look, we don't even know if there is one yet, mate. But I think it would start personally with a slow drip feed. If it has anything to do with QSI, for what it's worth, then it probably would have to be minority to begin with, because they still, whilst they're having a lot of trouble over in Paris and they don't like what their treatment, they still, and they are divesting away from Paris as we speak. They still do have a large slice of that pie, so they wouldn't be able to necessarily come in and do anything major. But I don't think they're the people that are supposed to be taking us over anyway. But we shall see. We shall see. Lads, I do want to pivot forward towards, you know, whether it's Ange in the hot seat next year or otherwise. You know, I would hope that the club, I know this is always a source of frustration when you hear this, like he was a manager signing, obviously coined by when Conte treated, for me, one of our best players this season with absolute disdain on his welcome debut. And he said, you know, this club is not my player. He's a clever player. When he was talking about Jed Spence. And yes, that is right. Every single chance I get, I will roll out the Conte impression. The way he was treated, but ultimately saying he's a club player. I think that clubs have to have one eye on the future. They always should be looking at players they're signing with one eye on it. Does he fit the current model? And will he fit the potential new model, whatever that looks like? Because you're signing young players on 5 or 6 year deals. And just when you look at the average length of most managerial tenures, it's only likely that it's only an inevitability for the most part that that player will see at least 2 managers in their first contract. So with that being said, guys, let's hope that we're not pivoting away from this new attractive football. I don't mind the variation of it, but I don't want to pivot back the pendulum towards something more pragmatic on a permanent basis. But within that kind of framework, there are areas of the pitch that should be looked at. And you'd hope that if you go big enough with the quality and the spend, that you can hopefully attract players that will fit most managerial philosophies. I personally am someone, and I might be wrong about this, I've said it a few times, I do think that in the summer, Tottenham will break our transfer record. And I do also think you'll see a new club's highest earner. How that looks and who that's on, I don't know. Do you guys have any particular kind of non-negotiables around where we look to improve in the summer? Is it like a centre-back that to come in and help and support? Is it that left winger, a striker, a 6? I've been calling for a 6 for 3 years. I still think the absence of it is a massive part of our issues on the pitch. Jim, I'll bring you in first, mate. Where do you see us going in the transfer market? Lots of rumours out at the moment, but obviously it's too early to get stuck into too many of them.
I think when you look at the squads, when it's in a normal situation, i.e. after a pre-season, you'd say, I've got Solanke and Richalison, who are, you know, that's an adequate, not great. You probably want to upgrade on Richalison, but you've got 2 strikers there, and you've got Tell as a third choice. I think wingers wise, we've actually got quite a few bodies in there now when you look at these young players. So I think the day is coming where Sonny, if you did get an offer, and I don't think we would, but if we did get an offer that worked for him and he wanted to go and it was for reasonable money, I would be saying now's the time to take that and bring in someone else who can play across either left or right wing, starting on the left. But anyway, to answer your question more directly, I think the midfield is the area when I watch games, I go, you've got some good players in there, but no one who really fits the way we play or our system. You've just got good technical players who can get away with it. So I'd like to see, I think everyone imagines this, because when Ange went to previous clubs, he always signed midfielders who are kind of combative leaders, kind of better versions of Højbjerg was kind of what he likes to sign. And I think we lack one or two of I'd say two of those characters as well. Bissouma is going to be in the last year's contract end of the season. So I think if you've got an offer again, it would be wise for Spurs to sell him, replace him, and sign another midfielder who's a ball winner. You've got to also be careful not to block the pathway for Gray, who is supposedly a 6 as a strong position. So I think 2 midfielders, assuming we sell one, is key. So 2 much better fitting midfielders.
What shape of midfielder? Like a 6-6 and
like a 6 for me. Okay. Yeah.
Any particular names?
No. I don't. That's the thing. It's so easy to say, go get a monster 6. Everyone says, who do you want? And they go, Rodri. It's like, well, there's only one of those. But look, there are players out there. Most of us hadn't been watching Micky van der Ven until we signed him. And players like
Jacob's in the chat. I want to shout you out, Jacob. If you're still watching, mate, you brought him to my attention. I was like, who is this guy, Van der Ven? Who do you think he is with that name? Turned out you were spot on, mate. He was incredible. So shout out to you.
Well, shout out to you, Jacob. Good effort, mate. And ones like Vicario. I know we do ours of Stu, who follows a lot of Serie A, and he was like, oh, it's great. He's been a bargain I've been hoping we'd get for ages, and we got him, and he proved us right. So these guys are out there. I think Man United showed us after years of dominance, you don't have to have the squad of 20 of the best players in the league. You need to have the most functional and versatile squad in the league that can consistently put out a solid team that knows how to play with each other and is not constantly disrupted. And they did that for years and years and years. So I think, I'd like to see that midfielder and another wing back. A lot happens. Depends what happens with Davies. Like, we're in a predicament with him. He's great. He's been fantastic.
I don't think you can get rid of him.
I don't think you can. Yeah. So can you add another centre back? Can you have 5?
I think I personally think that, unfortunately, and this is a controversial topic, but like Liverpool came out, or there was announcements out from The Athletic, which is one of the sort of journalists or the journals that you probably go, these guys don't just make up anything. They have some sort of substance. And they were saying that Micky van der Ven is their top choice. And if they can't get him, they go after either the fella Højbjerg from Bournemouth or Mark Gahey, both players of which Tottenham have been linked with. And I'm kind of sitting there thinking, well, even if you keep Van der Ven, because he's only a 40% games in the season kind of guy at the moment with his injuries, unless you can fix the injury, then you probably need to go big anyway on a second left-sided centre-back, because the entire team is going to struggle in this model with a high line if he's only playing 40%, right? So you can't have like not that I'm a fan of rotation player anyway, but you can't really have a sort of a B-Tech, a sort of a level lower rotation player if you're only going to get 40% of the minutes out of him. So I'd argue that you need to go big even if you keep him, but at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily be against selling one of him or Romero if you could get monster money in, because these players, Tottenham, one of the areas that Tottenham really struggle with is knowing when to sell, and it's part of the game.
Yeah, we're bad at it.
The game.
And really Romero's missed 40% of his games in 3 years. Like, you can't build a defense around that, which is very frustrating. I think a lot of it's not. I don't buy into the conspiracy theories that he deliberately fakes an injury just to make sure he's fit for his national team. But I do think there's some truth in the fact to say, why should he have an allegiance to Spurs? He's just a model professional who does his bit on the pitch. He probably trains well. Can't ask for anything more than that. But he has no affiliation to North London or Tottenham. So why should he care that extra mile? So maybe he's the type of player that you do say, go on then, Real Madrid have offered us good money for you. Have fun. And we'll go sign 2 players with the money who want
How much would you take for him?
I think you got to be pushing for at least 70, 80 million quid for him, I think.
Yeah. So a centre-back, you said a centre-back, a wing-back.
Centre-back, wing-back, and 2 midfielders. Because we'll probably sell one of our midfielders. I think we'll sell Bissouma. Yeah.
And then at a forward, did you say as well?
Yeah, a lot of that depends what happens with Richalison again, doesn't it? I think if you can get an offer for him, you could get a better player who could play on the wing or up front. We've got to be careful. We want to see Mikey Moore play and all these young players. We've got to make a decision. You either block the pathway and send them out on loan and sign someone ready now, or you accept the short-term pain and give them development time on the pitch, and you're not as good in the short term for that. So you've got to make your minds up what you want. Can't have both.
Just quickly before I bring Craig in then, Jim, just on that note, Jamie Donnelly absolutely pulling up trees down in Leyton Orient. I mean, I don't know if you saw the goal that he scored against Wrexham. wasn't quite as flashy as the kind of 40-yarder against City in the cup, but the technique of that somewhat cleared header, kept his head over the ball. Most Premier League players would either take a first touch or balloon that into row Z. I mean, he's just a real player, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah, he really is. And the thing that you look for in youth players, ones that typically are more likely to make it, are the ones that don't shy away from loans to lower league football. Because players who lack confidence in their own ability might be nervous about making that move, because if it goes wrong, you might never make it up to the Premier League again. Whereas Donnelly's confidently kind of said, I'll go down a division and I'll show you how good I am. I'm completely confident in my ability. I can work my way back up the pyramid and it won't be a bad decision for me. So, yeah, he stands out, doesn't he? You can just tell with him. It's just
and Josh Keeley, by the way. I think that Tottenham are quietly stacking up some of the best goalkeepers in best young goalkeepers in the game. I think we shouldn't have to really go after another goalkeeper for the next 5 years. We shall see. No. Craig, over to you, my man. I mean, I don't know if you've got any specific names or targets, but certainly start with the positions. Where do you see us focusing? Where do you want to see Tottenham focusing in the summer?
Pretty much the same, actually, rather than just to repeat Jim, but very similar thoughts. I would agree. I think the goalkeeper position, we've gone from almost being frightened to when Vicario got injured to having a really good squad of goalkeepers. You know, with Vicario, I think Kinsky's going to improve. Apart from the first game against Liverpool, I think he put in a couple of iffy performances, but he wasn't bad. I've seen worse. He will continue to learn, and I think Austin's proved that he's probably worth that 5-year contract he signed. Agree with Josh Keeley. I've been championing him for the last year and a half, 2 years, and I went and watched the under-21s a couple of times. Kept an eye on his progress. I think he's going to be an absolute. Well, he is a fantastic goalkeeper, and you got Luca Gunter as well. So we've got some really, really good goalkeepers out. I think we're fine. Right back, as long as we keep hold of Pedro Porro and Jed Spence and playing Jed in his proper position, I think we're good there. Centre backs, Romero, Van der Ven. If you keep hold of both of them, Dragusin comes back, and you got.
What do you think about Dragusin? Has Dragusin, is he kind of set the world alight like you were thinking he might do? Like I was thinking or hoping he might do?
I wouldn't say so. I think he's probably in the wrong system, to be honest, because he's not the fastest. I don't think he's a terrible defender. I've seen worse, but I think playing a high line, because he's not the quickest, he's always going to get found out to a degree. He's pretty good in the air. Unfortunate injury. Danso is okay. That's the 4. But we got Vuskovic coming in the summer. I know he's only going to be 18. But he's absolutely been ripping it up where he is. So are they going to think that Vuskovic, have a look at him perhaps pre-season and think, does he need another loan? Are we going to keep him on board? I agree. I think we should be keeping Davies around. I think he's good influence around the squad. The left back is a problem area. Now, you could say Gray. We've seen Gray play there. We've seen Spence play there absolutely admirably. But I think we need somebody, a specific left back, to push Udogie. You think Reguilon's going to be going out anyway, so we're going to lose Reguilon.
His contract's up in the summer, isn't he? So he's just going to be a freebie. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's gone anyway.
Someone will get a good player in him for me. I think that I don't understand the why no one seems to rate him in the not just him this group of coaching, but previous ones. I think he's a good player. I don't really understand it.
I agree. I'm just going to jump forward to the forward line and I'll come back to the midfield. And I'm trying to think about it while I'm talking, because I think in the forward line, obviously, Sonny, I think they're going to keep hold of. I love Heung Min Son anyway. I still think he's got miles in the tank. So you've got to keep hold of Sonny. Johnson, Werner's going to be gone. Then you got Brennan Johnson, Kulu a push on one of the wings, even though he's better in the number 10. Mikey Moore, Heung Min Hyuk, and I'm missing a couple. Odebear. I think we're well stacked, but what I think has to happen, Solanke, if we sign Tell, that's 2 centre forwards. I think you've got to then look at Richalison and say thank you, but go and play your football in Saudi or wherever he wants to go. I think we could get decent money for Richarlison. I've never been convinced he is the answer, Richarlison.
I didn't want him. I didn't want him from the get-go. I thought it was ridiculous money.
No, I mean, he's never scored more than, I think, 13 in the Premier League, and that's not a good return for a number 9. So it's just, I love his attitude. I love his battling ability is shithousery, but we need something a bit better. So I think he can go, depending on what happens with Tell. And obviously, I don't know if you're going to talk about it, Sean, the replacing Harry Kane with Harry Kane. That could be
Well, that's what I said it
interesting.
earlier. Yeah, I mean, how much? 50? Is it 56 million pound? I think is the
so. Either
something like that.
56 or 65 or something like that. But it's a snip, really. And
would you bring him back in a heartbeat?
Oh, in a heartbeat, absolute heartbeat. Yeah. And you've got to remember, although he's a multi-millionaire, he's settled in Germany, his kids are in a German-speaking school. Look at the age of his kids. I would imagine his missus is going to be thinking, right, well, we want to come back to England at some point and get the family settled. And people think footballers don't think about that. I guarantee they do, because they're human beings, right?
Yeah, of course.
So he will be thinking to himself, he'll have that Shearer record in the back of his head. I can't see Harry Kane going personally to Manchester United, because why would you at the moment? We've discussed Manchester United.
Yeah, exactly.
He wouldn't be going.
He's not going to go to Arsenal. He's not going to go to Chelsea.
No. He's not going to go.
They don't need him. Yeah, they don't need him anymore.
Doubt it, because he's a London boy. I think it's already in the back of his mind. He knows he can come back to Spurs as long as he.
Does it depend though? Does it absolutely depend on them winning something, and something not minor? Yeah. They need to win
Bundesliga. I don't think they're going to win the Champions League. You never know, but I don't think they will. But I think if they win the Bundesliga, I've no idea about the German Cups, whether they're still in the German Cup. I don't know. But if he wins,
one of the Cups is already done and they didn't win it. So there's one left, I think, but I could be wrong about that. Let us know in the chat. And whilst you're at it, chat, we like to play the ones and zeros game. Let me know if there's anyone out there that's a 0 on this. 1, if Harry Kane coming back is part of your cup of tea. 0, if you're not on board the Harry Kane return. 1 for Harry Kane in, 2 for Harry Kane out, and go somewhere else.
That'll be interesting.
Sorry, carry on, Craig. So yeah, about that, Harry Kane. So he's your target, and you said you were going to come back to the midfield. What does the midfield look like?
I would say if we need somebody that can play across that front line. Harry Kane would be the ultimate for me, but if not, you've got to bring in somebody else. Midfield, personally, I would send Bissouma on his way. Bentancur has had some good games. I think if an offer come in for Bentancur, I think you probably have to take it. Personally, I know that's probably upset a lot of people, but I don't think Rodrigo Bentancur is. The trouble is with Bissouma and Bentancur. I agree with what you've said for months, Sean. We need that monster number 6. Now, is that monster number 6 Archie Gray? I think that's asking a lot of an 18, 19-year-old.
I'm not sure if he's a monster. I don't know. I think the monster part of the 6 that I'm talking about is someone that has this, like, I don't know, this kind of, I hate to say it, but like the Roy Keane energy. Like someone who's not afraid. I'm not saying, because I don't know. I've not seen enough of Archie Gray's outfield work to know whether he has the kind of the X factor in regards, like not being afraid to just kind of go through someone if they have to, like a Romero, right? Like Johnny, part of the channel, put some clips up on Twitter of like 60 seconds of Romero just being Romero. And obviously I said to him, okay, a lot of those clips a lot of those individual like clips in that video montage, he either got a red card or should have got one. And, that it wasn't great, but I just feel like the Tottenham's midfield needs a little bit of a nastier vibe to it, and I actually see a little bit of in Lucas Berghvall. I think he's got a bit of that kind of in him, but it's still very, very vulnerable to getting it wrong. And I think unless he kind of softens that, not softens it, but like sands it down a little bit, I think he might be red card merchant as well. But yeah, listen, I don't know if Archie Gray's the guy. But when I say about a monster 6, I want someone that's just a no nonsense, sit in front of that back 4 or back 2, whatever it is, just clean things up. And if you can't clean it up, then clean them out, and then also be able to pick your pass and have a 92, 93% accuracy where where it's got, when it has to go somewhere, it's going to get there most of the time. And I don't know if Archie Gray's that guy. But that's what I'm looking for in the Monster 6, Craig.
I think Archie Gray is more than would be a capable deputy to a Monster number 6. And of course, he can play in other positions if we get these injuries like we've had before. Sadly, we haven't actually seen him in his best position yet because he's been playing centre back, right back, and left back. What I would say, the attacking midfield role, if we get a fit and firing Kulusevski and a fit and firing Maddison, like we get Maddison last game, then you haven't got any issues with that. But it's just the thing with Maddison for me. He's not been consistent enough. He's not been consistent enough in that role. So I'm not saying we should sell Maddison personally, but somebody said Callum McGregor. I watched Celtic the other night.
He was cracking, wasn't he, against Bayern Munich? He was fantastic.
Such a good player. Very much like in the Højbjerg mould, isn't he? And it's funny because we was all saying about Højbjerg, he's got to go, he don't fit the system. He does fit the system. We've all seen that. And I was wrong about it.
He just doesn't have the pace. If he had 10% more pace, he could be a top draw player, but he's got everything for me, just apart from that mobility, you know.
Yeah. So for me, in answer to your question, in a very roundabout sort of way, and I apologise, left back, centre midfield, defensive centre midfield, and somebody that can play across the front line. Hopefully, Harry Kane.
Hopefully, Harry Kane. I thought it was going to be universal, the Harry Kane ones and zeros game, but there's actually a few people in there that have said, like Malcolm, for example, said 0. Miss Bunny, I don't know what 2 represents. In a coma, there's a lot of people that aren't really on board. Not a lot of people, but a few people. I find it odd. Because this guy doesn't rely on pace. He's like a Teddy Sheringham on steroids. He's the smartest player, can do everything with the ball at his feet, and his goal record in Bayern Munich is just absolutely phenomenal. Speaking about European teams, guys, tomorrow 12 o'clock we do have the draw. I'm just going to get up. I think there's obviously been I've seen people in the chat talking about some late drama in some of the games. Bodo Glimt apparently in a sounds like I'm missing out on a. Actually, well, there you go. It's in the 119th minute, but I think Bodo Glimt have just got past. Yeah, they have 6-4 on aggregate, 5-2 tonight, 5-2 on the night. So Bodo Glimt are in the last 16. Ajax are still playing. They're 2-1 up, but they're 1-0 down tonight against Union Saint-Gilloise. That's a team that apparently Tottenham were thinking about having some sort of stake in. Sociedad beating Midtjylland. That looks like it's going to be done. It's 3-1, and it's 2-0 now, so it's 3-1. So it's either going to be it looks like it's going to be Sociedad or AZ Alkmaar. Something's happened in Anderlecht where that game has been suspended. Don't know what's happened there. And Roma are through against Porto. There's a few other games going on. Victoria Pilsen as well against Ferencváros. That game at the moment is just 20 minutes in, and Ferencváros are currently going through if things stay as they are. But as it looks, guys, let's just kind of talk about the teams that we know are definitely through is Lazio, Athletic Bilbao, United, Tottenham, Frankfurt, Lyon, Olympiacos, Rangers, and then, as I said, Bodo Glimt going through. Looks like Ajax, looks like Sociedad, Ferencváros, and AZ Alkmaar. And there's a couple other teams that we don't know about yet. Of all of those teams I just mentioned, the betting market would have you say, or have you believe that Manchester United are the favourites, Tottenham are second favourites, and after that you've got Atletico Bilbao and then Lazio. Is there anybody else, before we come to those three teams specifically, is there anybody else that either of you guys see as a major threat to a team that Tottenham would struggle against over a 2-leg game, if we had our players returning? Jim, I mean, either of you can go, but Jim, I'll come to you first.
I think pretty much anyone, and you look at the odds there, like there's a lot of teams in there that could cause problems, like Frankfurt, Sociedad, Lazio, Bilbao, Man United. Like all these clubs are really good. Like they would in the Premier League, they wouldn't be getting relegated, would they? There'd be a side and that could beat us on their day in the Premier League if things went their way. I think over 2 legs it helps, because I think we are the best team left in that tournament squad wise. Now players are coming back, and over 2 legs you're more likely to see the side with a better squad shine through, because it removes the amount of uncertainty and randomness that comes with football over 90 minutes. So yeah, I think we can, but I love the Europa League. I know people who don't like it. The reason I love it is because Man City aren't in it. And I know they're not very good this year, but I like being in competitions where I don't have to compete with Man City and Real Madrid, because they've got 40% more revenue than us, and as a result, better players. So I like being in a competition where I feel like we are the big boy in the competition, and we've underachieved, and yeah, European heritage is part of Spurs, isn't it? So yeah, look, I'm going to just love it, whoever we get. I'm not looking at any of those teams thinking, I hope I avoid one. I've just got a weird feeling about AZ this year that like it was for Ajax when they went on that Champions League run, just that things are going their way and they've just got momentum and energy behind them that I'm a bit fearful of. But yeah, look, there's no one in there particularly I'm downbeat about drawing. I think we can beat anyone in there. I'm excited.
Is anybody, Jim, just quickly before I come to Craig, is there anybody that you look at that looks at Tottenham and thinks, fancy that?
Yeah, I think a lot of them will, if they don't have the full context to, like, we didn't have this huge influx of players coming back and we've knocked out of 2 domestic trophies, so now we can actually focus properly on the Europa League. I think a lot of them, they'll look at where we are on the table and go, brilliant, I've got Spurs. But I'm now thinking I would not want to play Spurs on the reverse anymore. I don't think any of them in there would be looking at us as one of the top 3 teams they want to play against. Certainly not. So, yeah, I think we're in a good spot. I think Man United are only up there on the rankings, right? Because the way the betting odds work, as I understand, you might know more, Sean, is they don't just take, like, there's not just some algorithm that says this is how good a team is. It's based on previous performances in European competitions. So Man United will have a record of winning the Champions League and things like that. Previous records of those clubs playing each other and the number of bets on that club, and they've got a bigger fan base. So those things all contribute to the odds. So in reality,
I think generally speaking, it's kind of like there is a coefficient that would be built around how the betting market would start. But ultimately after that, it comes down to money, right? Like wherever the money goes, if there's lots of money piling onto something, the odds shorten because the bookmakers will be laying that off into other bookmakers, and so the money, even if if all the money's going into Betfair, for example, which has obviously got like a trading platform for it, then those people the people that are there will just be offloading it into the various bookmakers, and then as a consequence, all the odds come down. But so it starts off with some sort of coefficient, but then after that, it becomes essentially where the money is. And I think a lot of people have been telling me, if you look in the Dutch betting shops online, then you'll see this. Get a VPN. Which, by the way, I was going to test out my new sponsorship, NordVPN, on today's show, but I haven't got my lingo down pat yet. So I'm gonna save that for the next one. But if you are interested in a wonderful option, then to protect yourself, and if you know me, then protection of cybersecurity threats is something that's very close to my heart and to my life right now. And there is a link in the description, but this isn't going to count as the as one of the ads. But yeah, look, I think that apparently if you were to use a VPN, then you can go to Holland or whatever. Apparently, people were telling me that you can do that, and you'll see that Man United and Tottenham are not the favourites. But I'm not sure that's the case. I think it's more to do with the size of the fan base, and people would much rather back their team than sort of bet against it. But if Tottenham and Manchester United are the favourites right now, Craig, given what I saw the other night on Sunday, as I say, it's a big indictment of the standard of the Europa League. I look at Atletico Bilbao. I think someone said that they're the finals at their place are their gaff this season, so they'll be motivated to do well. They're a very strong team. Lazio, no one really likes an away trip to Rome. I think Lazio are in Rome, aren't they? I think on the Thursday night. So what's your take, my man? We'll find out tomorrow who we get. We know it's one of 2, but who do you see as the dark horses for the competition? Who do you want to avoid, if not in this particular round, but if we go further on, who do you want to go somewhere else before they play us?
Yeah, to be honest, the way our luck's been in various cup competitions this season, fate would say that we'll probably get on the bad side of the draw anyway. I just think any of those teams we can beat on our day, and probably most of them can beat us. That's what I'd say. And you just never know what you're going to get with Tottenham. So certain, obviously, the teams we've already discussed, like the Lazios, even Alkmaar to a degree, if we draw them, that's not going to be a pushover, and where the final is, obviously, Sociedad, Bilbao, you could go through almost every team and find a reason to say, yeah, they're going to be tough. They're going to be tough. But it's a cup competition. You're down to the last 16. These teams haven't got there. They've got there by merit, You don't get there by right. But Manchester United, at least we can't draw them till the final, because wouldn't that be typical Tottenham? Get to the final, draw Manchester United. We've beaten them 3 times, and we don't beat them in the game that means the most.
So true. Beat them in all the irrelevant fixtures, and then we get that exactly. Yeah, and you know what? United are a good cup team. They are a good cup team. They are,
and he might have had them fight. I mean, Amorim. I've seen United fans already calling for Amorim's head. I mean, there's talk about not getting any time in football nowadays. Christ, he's got a job on his hands. But
why did he sign? Sorry to sidetrack the conversation here, but why did he take that on? Like, what was he thinking? What was he thinking going into that sinking ship when he had everything going for him in Portugal? He had a great team, doing brilliant things, always there or thereabouts in the cups, one of the big three. And then he went, nah, is it money? Was it just money? Or was it the challenge? Because he knew what he was walking into. He knew that there was no budget available. He knew he had a squad of a lot of deadwood that weren't going to fit his model. I just don't understand why he took that one on. It's such a weird one.
I think, look, it's partly, I think you're right. It's got to be down to money. God knows what he's on. He's probably on a decent whack. It's going to be on more than he was. But I think the name still carries favour with a lot of people, especially in Europe. Manchester United, biggest club in England. A lot of people would say the biggest club in Liverpool, and City would probably have something to say about that. But historically, they are. The amount of revenue they generate worldwide is astronomical. Yet the club is an absolute basket case, like you say, nearly £1 billion in debt. But probably like every other manager has taken that job on, the certain ego inside them thought, I can do it. I know Moyes failed. I know Ten Hag failed, and you could go through the whole list. But he's probably thinking, no, I can do that. He's looked at the squad thinking, yeah, a couple of windows, I can turn this round. But you just don't see anything. Like Gary Neville always talks about, I don't see a plan. I can't see the way Manchester United are trying to play at the moment. I know this isn't a Manchester United channel, but seeing as we're on the subject,
it's fine. We'll talk about it. Yeah,
they're a team that I was actually very confident about us beating last week, to be honest with you. I just didn't see us losing that game at all because they've been so bad. But yeah, bringing it back to Europa, I genuinely think we got a chance, Sean. I really do. But we've got to keep our players fit.
Yeah. And that obviously is the kind of the elephant in the room, right? It's not, everyone's always making this assumption that we get the players back and everything changes. And we were expecting players back for the Liverpool game. They didn't arrive. And then we end up losing another one in Richalison. Jim and Craig, last question to you guys, and then we'll sort of give you a chance to plug anything on socials and things and the YouTube channels. And thank you very much for coming on. But yeah, do you see a clean pathway now towards, what do we have? 13 more games in the Premier League, maybe, or hopefully several more in the Europa League. Do you see any more hiccups in our pathway back to a fitter squad? Or do you see it kind of as we have hoped that Van der Ven and Romero are being protected, but it's not like there's no recurrences there. It's just part of more of a strategy. And same with Udogie, same with, some of the guys in the midfield and at the top end. Is it going to be just no more problems? Just bit by bit, we're going to get the guys back and finish the season strongly. How do you see that one playing out?
Well, yeah, like you said, we still don't have either of our starting centre-backs back. And I think even though we've got a lot of other players coming back, that is quite an underrated situation. That Liverpool lost Van Dijk for one season pretty much, and they went from winning, didn't they, to 8th, was it, the following season? And that was largely pinned on losing that one centre-back for the season. So losing both was pretty detrimental. I think we're going to be really cautious of them. If you believe what you read about Micky van der Ven and looking at the mechanics of his body to avoid future hamstring injuries and taking extra time, I think this season will be a bit more of a very cautious experiment with Micky and just using him in the Europa League as a kind of, at full velocity, but just being very careful. And how can we make sure we have him for all of next season will be the approach. And Romero, I think it's tough to say if he wants to be here or not. We don't know for sure. But I feel like with him, again, he'll be a player thinking, I'm going to put a lot more energy into that Europa League game and make sure I get a trophy out of this, with some uncertainty of whether I'm going to be here next year or not. But he's a model pro as well, so I think he'll always give it all. But yeah, I don't really foresee any major issues. I think it's going to be, we've got to think Odegaard's come back as well, but that's a massive injury. It's going to take time. I do think
I really liked what I saw from him in the last few minutes, though. I thought he looked busy, he's exciting, isn't he?
Yeah, he's exactly what we needed on the wings. Not having him for the season is really underrated. Of a huge.
No one talks about that. No one talks about his absence. Right? I think it's been so meaningful and significant.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, he completed more dribbles in 10 minutes than I think Son did in the previous 80, which Granted, it's a sample
I
size.
think I'd say
of
the
2.
previous 8 months.
No, it's a sample size of 2, to be fair. So it's not really the same. I love Sonny. I think he's definitely got a place in the squad. Just for disclaimer there, but it's. I think we're going to be cautious in the league. I don't expect it to suddenly blitz everyone, but I expect an improvement to finish around mid-table, and we'll go all out on that Europa League. I think that'll be the focus.
Sensational, Jim. This is not your debut on the channel, mate, but you're always a brilliantly well received sort of contribution to it, mate. Love your takes, love your insight, love the depth that your channel goes into. Talk about what's coming up on Also Spurs, buddy, and where can people find you?
So today we interviewed, and it's up live now, Mason Mellier's coach from Bray Wanderers. So he's given us insight into him, like as a person behind the scenes. We've obviously had Anton McElhone on, who is head of sports science for Ange, Poch, ABB, and Redknapp and Sherwood. So you can find that on there as well. We've had JJ on a bit, who's an A licensed coach who got his license with Kieran McKenna as well. So we do breakdowns now with him after performances. I had to delete the last couple because apparently one screen grab of a Premier League match was a copyright breach, so I had to delete it and I've got to change it. But anyway, so yeah, lots of content on there with special guests, and we got some more coming up. Vince Rigari we got on there as well and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully get you on.
Have a word with you, mate. Find out how you have these wonderful relationships. I just sit there. No disrespect, Johnny, but you're not. You're not the equivalent of Vescovich's coach and Mason Millier's coach and all these guys. These guys know how to find some real creators.
We did interview Vescovic and Alfie Devine a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that. That was absolutely sensational.
That was shout out to Elias for that. But yeah, lots of cold.
So get over to Also Spurs, guys. There's the link. It's in right there, and it'll be in the description straight after the show. But it's also just a few comments up. And Jim is absolutely fantastic. Thanks again, Jim. Lovely to see you, mate.
Cheers,
Craig. Do you have? Would you like me to plug a social, like a Twitter handle, or is Chris Cowlin's channel the right one to plug? How do you want me to kind of support you here?
Yeah, at Chris Cowlin is the YouTube channel, which encompasses the Spurs Chat podcast and loads of other stuff that Chris does daily. 60-second updates, and I do the thought of the day. And you will probably know Chris anyway. He's incredibly hard work, and he covers everything Tottenham, under 18s, under 21s, ladies, old age pensioners, everything. He covers everything. So yeah.
Have we got an old age pensioners team? Have we? How are they getting on this year?
I think we should. But God knows what the ticket price Daniel Levy charged for tickets.
Yeah, it'll be a lot for sure.
But yeah, at Chris Cowlin, and you'll find all the stuff over there. Me personally, if you want to follow me, I'm at Dearman9 on X.
At Dearman9. There we go.
So yeah, look, it's been an absolute pleasure being on, Sean. Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it, and you could talk all evening about Tottenham, couldn't we? But
we could, mate. We could. And listen, Craig, it's been a long time coming, my man. Sorry, just at Dearman9, is it DEAM? DEARMAN.
Number 9.
Yeah. Number 9. There you go, guys. Listen, Craig is just a fantastic guy, mate. You're so smooth with your takes, so sort of just peaceful, and I love it. It's been a lovely chat tonight. And Craig, to make your first sort of debut Tottenham-based podcast away from Chris's channel, absolutely sensational debut, mate. I'd love to have you back on as often as you'd like. I know everyone's also been very, very happy to see you on and really impressed with your takes as well, mate. So thank you both of you. Absolutely sensational stuff, guys. That's us. I think. If you get yourself over to Last Word on Spurs, I believe they're going live pretty soon. I think you're going to see Lee McQueen back over there with the wonderful Ricky Sachs for a nice talk as well. So I'll send you over there. You'll see me over there tomorrow night with Johnny and with Big Dave, Irish Hotspur fame, one of my favourite people in the entire planet. And we'll leave you here, and we'll say, as always, guys, thank you everyone for the super chats. Thank you for your patience and your attention this evening. We'll see you again, and I'll see you tomorrow out with Bugsy for whatever's going on in the world of Tottenham Hotspur transfer news, views, and clues. For now, guys, we'll hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Ciao, ciao. As always.
Up the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.
Cheers, Sean.
Absolutely.